Welcome to Music City Online. I'm Nashville music producer Gary Earl. Tonight we have a very special guest. We're bringing from LA, straight from LA, Michael Laskow is the founder and CEO of Taxi, the world's leading independent A&R company. Since 1992, he spearheaded connections, deals, and placements for thousands of independent songwriters, artists, and composers, including myself. Prior to Taxi, it was extremely difficult for independent musicians to get their music placed in TV shows and films. Trust me, I know, I did that. I moved to LA, I hit the streets, I hit the parties, and a lot of hobnobbing, still difficult. Even with all the credits I have today, still difficult, but not so much with Taxi. In fact, I think it was only my second or third month after I joined that we got a national commercial through Madison Avenue Ad Company for Playtech Sports. And that was very, very good, a very good placement. So
I remember that one.
Terrific, yeah.
Oh, thanks for that nice intro, Gary. I appreciate it.
Well, your history in the music business, though, dates back to the middle 70s when you worked as an engineer and producer on a lot of gold and platinum records, right? Neil Young, Melanie, Cheap Trick, Eric Clapton, Crosby, Stills, Nash Young, Firefall.
Yep, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was blessed in that I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show when I was 9 years old, and like so many people that night said, that's what I want to do for a living. And 10 years later, I happened to be in the lobby of Criteria Studios in Miami, which was one of the top 5, maybe one of the top 3 studios in the country at the time. And as I was sitting in the lobby, the owner of the company walked through and said, we need a new kid, like a gopher. And I jumped out of my chair, waved my arms, got tossed out, pestered him, 25 phone calls in a single week. He finally interviewed me. I got the gig.
Cool. Sweet. I think I remember reading that story somewhere, and you had mentioned Ace Music of Miami.
Yeah.
In your story. I know Ace Music well. It's where I bought my first keyboard. I was in college and out on the road, and we stopped by and bought a Mini Moog there.
Wow.
Late 70s.
That's how I ended up being. I was in that store with a roommate of mine who he inherited a little money when his aunt passed away, and he was there buying or trading or something here. And a delivery guy mentioned that he was going to Criteria to take an art string ensemble or something over for Stephen Stills. And I pestered him until he let me go, and I sat in the lobby, and that's when it ran its course, and I got the gig.
Cool. That was a great music store.
It was in the pre-Guitar Center days, and it was the biggest and the best in Miami.
Yep, it was, and all the major acts stopped by there and bought stuff. Great stuff.
Yep.
Wow. So of all those artists, you have to have a lot of good stories. Did you have anyone that was your favorite to work with, or?
I actually loved working with all of them, and for different reasons. Melanie was amazing because we did a double live album in the studio with an audience of 30 people who called into a radio station. So like 10 nights in a row, we'd have 30 different people sitting on the floor. The band did the whole record live, top to bottom, and then after 10 days of that, we cut the 24 track for the best moments of each night, and then mixed the record rather quickly. That was amazing because it was live but in the studio.
Yeah, that's.
I guess my favorite stuff probably would have been the Neil Young stuff, because that was largely just Neil, myself, and my assistant in the room for somewhere around 90 days, I think.
Wow. He strikes me as a real character, but a real good-hearted character. I don't know.
He's a great guy. I've got nothing but wonderful things to say about him. I was still very young. He was very patient. He's demanding, but very cool about it. He would do stuff like walk around the studio with a Martin strapped on, and my assistant sometimes I have to follow him around with an 87 because he would just noodle on his guitar and maybe hum a line or sing a line. And 3 weeks later, hey, remember that Thursday afternoon? And I did that thing about going back. Can you guys pull that out? And they go, yeah, that's a song. Let's sit down and record that.
Yeah.
So it was challenging in a good way. He taught me
Yeah.
a lot about production because there was no producer on the record at that time. It's just the three of us. And he would do a take, look through the window and go, "Oh, how was that?" And I had to have a cogent answer for him or I'd look like an idiot. So I
Yeah.
learned a lot from him and enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. That's very cool. Some good days there, no doubt. Wow. So let's talk about Taxi here for a minute. Now, I know you've been in the business for like 23 years, but there's still a lot of people who don't really know exactly what Taxi does. Can you tell us?
Yeah, it's surprising to me that after 23 years that people are still, I see stuff posted online. Oh yeah, Taxi, they charge musicians. And it's true, it's $300 a year. And how it works quite simply is you join, you become a member. Record companies, publishers, production music libraries that do largely instrumental, but some stuff with lyrics. They're film and TV specific publishers, ad agencies, music supervisors working on anything from reality shows up to huge feature films. They call or email us and say, "This is what I need." They tell us specifically what they need, when they need it by. We pry more information out of them. We really pride ourselves on digging deep to get all the right information.
Right.
We publish that info to our members who are number in the thousands in, I think, 90 countries around the world. And our members that feel that they've got something that's a good fit for that particular, we call them listings. They're kind of like classified ads. Send the music into that specific thing. We then have screeners that are part of our A&R team that are all unbelievably well credentialed experts in the industry, and they are genre specific. So if you're sending your music in for a country thing, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to have there's an excellent chance you're going to have a country screener who's actually living and working in Nashville down a wire for us, screening the music and deciding which stuff is on target for what the label requested and is good enough to meet that quality bar. They also give feedback so that if you're a person working out of a basement studio in Peoria, you're going to get feedback to find out why you were forwarded on to the company or why you weren't forwarded on and what you could do to improve your song or your track. So that's what we do, but a lot of people just go, "Oh, Taxi charges money," and there's so much more depth to that story that I wish people would take the time to read.
Well, yes, because even if you just consider if someone from Peoria is going to mail a CD into LA, just the amount of time it takes to do it, not to mention you don't have the connections to do that anyway. But just the amount of time and money it takes to do that is considerable amount more than doing it through Taxi. And
and it used to be you go find a music attorney that would shop your stuff if they thought they were a filter,
right,
as well, because they wouldn't just shop anything because they were getting paid. You had to be somebody that wouldn't ruin their reputation if they walked you through the door.
Yeah. And something else I'd like to bring up is that that you haven't actually mentioned is that not only do people get cuts through Taxi and placements, but they also get connections, because the New York ad agency that we got the Playtex commercial through, I have a relationship with that music super now, and there's one music super that I met through Taxi that I didn't get she didn't take my stuff, but she liked it. But the point is that I have a relationship with her. We've actually become good friends, and I have got cuts since then through her too. So the connections is as or more important even than getting the cut.
Right. I'll see people online on, a message board or something saying, "Oh, don't use Taxi. It's really about building relationships." Well, that guy in Peoria has little to no chance of building those relationships. Yes, if you want to work 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day and do all that businessy stuff.
But through Taxi, he can build relationships.
Yeah, but you've got to be relentless and you've got to be articulate and businesslike and know to keep your emails down to like 2 sentences.
Yes.
So a lot of musicians lean more toward the creative side and don't want to deal with the business stuff. And that's one of the things we bring to them.
Okay.
So one of the great things about Taxi, I believe, is the community. You mentioned there are so many members that have some specific talents, but maybe not the broad spectrum. So there are people that can write a good top line, but they don't have a home studio. They can't produce their own stuff. And on our forum or at the Taxi Road Rally, sometimes even in the chat room on Taxi TV, they meet each other and will then use each other, hire each other, co-write with each other. I mean, I think that you do stuff for Taxi members all the time, right?
That's true. I produced a number of things for quite a few Taxi members. Since I do pop in particular, that's works out real good. And I've done a lot of instrumentals. I did a lot of the music for Ellen, for The Bachelor, Pokemon, Batman. A lot of
Wow,
stuff.
you know Pokemon?
Pokemon. And that's surprisingly enough, that's helped me with a lot of music supers because a lot of them have kids that are into Pokemon.
Ah,
So I use that for an opening line when we're talking. I say, hey, I see you got a kid that's 12 years old too and into Pokemon. I did a lot of the music for Dragon's Lair and Dragon's Territory.
that's cool. See, you never know what might be the thing that helps build that relationship.
That's
But
true.
I'm glad that you've gotten to know our members over the years and that you do work with them.
Yeah.
There's some incredibly talented people that are, hidden in very small towns all over the world.
Yeah.
That
In fact, we just sent you a member this week. Someone came to me with an Aerosmith type song to produce, to make a film TV master, and she didn't know about you. And
wow,
we told her, and she signed up. So,
cool. Thank you. I appreciate that referral.
yeah.
I look
Well, you
forward
know
to
what?
it.
She's living in Kansas, and quite frankly, Kansas is a long way from, L.A., Nashville, and New York, and you're perfect for, what she does.
Yep.
And quite frankly, she's a very good writer, too.
Yeah, great writers
Yeah.
can be found anywhere. Geography has
Yes.
very little to do with it. And like you said,
Yeah.
it builds relationships for you. At least you've got, even if you don't get that particular gig,
Right.
you made contact with them. They may reach out to you and say,
Yep.
hey, the piece you sent wasn't exactly what we needed, but we love what you're doing. And
Yep.
boom, you've got a lifetime relationship that you probably wouldn't have gotten on your own.
So here's one of the questions from one of your Taxi members.
Okay.
I want to know one of the most frustrating things that come with being the head of Taxi, or a good rewarding story, too.
All right. Under the frustration column, it's that on a very personal level, I want to see every Taxi member succeed. And
Yeah.
and they don't. Obviously not everybody who joins Taxi is going to be successful, but I believe the vast majority of them could be if they're willing to do some work on their end. But it's
Right.
amazing to me how people don't take the time to read the listings carefully. Good example, yesterday, the guys on my staff were playing me some music we were forwarding to, I think, a music supervisor who asked for stuff. They wanted full-length instrumentals that were at least 2 minutes long. And there were 2 or 3 pieces that would have gotten forwarded, but they were only 15 seconds long. The thing flat out says at least 2 minutes long, yet our
Yeah.
members miss that. So it frustrates me a great deal
Yeah.
that all they had to do was read that thing twice and just make sure that they were hitting, all the requirements. Under the most satisfying thing, it's changing people's lives. There have been thousands of Taxi members that had this dream. They live in the middle of nowhere. They could live here in LA. Like you said, go to parties, whatever, the time it's going to take to build the relationships is very long and very immense. Anyway, I think it's generally rewarding that these people are getting deals. And I get emails from people saying, I've wanted this my whole life and now I'm finally doing it. Yesterday I saw a thing from one of our members named Jeff Greenleaf. He lives here in LA, lives in Malibu, and he teaches Braille to children by day. But he's had his music on 125 different TV shows.
Wow.
And
So
tons and tons and tons of his music. I'm sure you've heard it if you've ever watched TV. He's
Exactly.
that busy, but he's doing it part time. He's got a real a real gig. But yet, I'm guessing maybe he works, I don't know, maybe another 10 or 20 hours a week doing his music and has created a very stable and ever growing second income. So that's one thing that's very satisfying. And one more story is we've got an elderly gentleman who I believe is either 90 or 92 years old, and he recorded some music. I think it was big band stuff back in like the mid 40s during World War II. The stuff has been sitting on a shelf now for 70 years. We've got him 70 years, and this guy's wanted this his whole life, and we got his stuff to a publisher that is, in my opinion, the best at getting vintage music into film and TV. And this elderly gentleman has now, at last count, had 16 placements, many of them in feature films and top TV shows. And to get a phone call from a guy who says, "This is what I've been dreaming of my whole life. I'm not going to live much longer, and you've made my dreams come true. Forget the money, forget the fame. Just knowing that millions of people have heard my music is payment enough, and I feel like, essentially, if I passed away tomorrow, my life is complete because of a good idea that you had and what you're doing." So that's pretty damn rewarding.
Oh, which, by the way, that's a good segue into... I heard a great story about you just about 10 minutes ago, actually. And also, before I forget this...
Notice the pizza sauce stain right in the middle of the console. Yeah, that was me in New York at a place called Howard Schwartz Recording, which was probably the largest audio post facility anywhere on the planet at the time. I think it eventually grew to have like 11 rooms. And I was the studio manager and an audio post engineer there, and mostly worked on advertising stuff. Very, very high level Madison Avenue stuff all
nice
day.
Pick, though. Well, what I just heard the story, since you're talking about rewarding, Ralph Murphy, a good friend of both of ours, told me that a few years ago when he was doing the Taxi Road rallies, that people would, ask him to give them an e-valve, and so he said, "Okay, I'll give you an e-valve over here. You give me $10, and I'll put $10 with it, and I'll match it, and we'll give it to the, was it the union, shelter of the homeless."
Right, in Nashville.
Yeah, and so he did that and accumulated and was writing a big check, and you asked him what he was doing, and said, "Okay, I'll match it." And he said, "So you matched all of that." And what a great story. That's just another good example of your giving back to the community,
Well, thanks for mentioning that. Ralph is, like you said, a dear, dear friend. And I think it's great that he spent so much time at the Road Rally and events all over the world, actually, giving evaluations to people and then donating the money. And I think last year, Ralph and I didn't connect at the end of the Road Rally, but I think we've matched his donation every year for, I don't know.
Many years, yeah.
Look, that's, we don't talk about it much, but I remember when we started the company 23 years ago, my then business partner, kind of a silent partner in the company at that time, named Michael Lederer, said to me, "Look, even when we're not profitable, I think we should donate money to great causes just as a karma thing." Yep. And we always have and always will, and we have done a lot of good for a lot of people, and I'm proud of that. Thank you for mentioning it. But
by the way, Ralph also said to ask you about your golf game. He said you're a really good golfer.
He's lying. Ralph and I, when Ralph comes to LA in the spring, he always stays at our house, and he and I go golfing for 2 days, and we have a blast. He's a better golfer than I am. I really only golf like 2 days out of the year, always with Ralph. I rarely break 100 on like on a big boy course. I don't really care how well I do. For me, it's all about getting outdoors and being with a good friend. But yeah, Ralph kicks my butt every year.
Having fun. Yes, exactly.
I can't believe you brought that up.
By the way, I've got another picture here too to talk about marketing and hard working. I was on a panel at the Road Rally, and I got this picture and this card in the mail thanking me for being on the panel, and that was a good example of just, really good marketing and, a handwritten note inside and stuff that's very nice. So that was a fun
Um,
panel.
I think that a lot of people don't realize. First of all, we do a thing. One of the other things I forgot to mention about what you get for your $300 a year is we do a world class convention every year that
Yep.
each and every taxi member gets 2 free tickets to. And you were on that panel of successful members a
Yeah.
few years ago. Um, what people don't know is that we do it. It comes out of our pocket. I mean, some years, one year, I think it was in 2013, I had to write a check for $25,000 to make up the shortfall because nobody pays to come to this conference.
Yeah.
So if it's a skinny year for sponsors because the economy, yours truly has to pay for it. But we still do it because what happens is people learn so much during the course of that weekend. They make so many connections, even standing in the registration line,
Right.
that more members are successful. And it's self-serving. We want our members to be successful, so tell other people about it. It's self-serving, but it does come from a good place.
It makes for a great community.
Yeah, it does.
Another question for another taxi member tweeted to me. RC would like to know the name of your favorite pet, the childhood street you grew up on, and your last 4 digits of your social security number. No, wait. I think that's a hacker. We might want to skip that one.
Yeah, and none of those are my password. But
No, the online.
I did have a German Shepherd growing up, 2 German Shepherds. One was named Ela and one was named Shotzi, and neither of them are a password for anything.
That's good. Well, a lot of your online members, we a lot of it's just having a good time chatting and having a lot of jokes and stuff with each other. So we have a lot of fun. So there is a couple of things I wanted to ask you about regards to taxi too, is talking about the the demo master scale issue, and if you can use union sessions and that whole 9 yards.
I am so glad you're asking that question. Not enough people are aware of this, and it can get them into real trouble.
Yeah.
It's primarily for people who are based out of Nashville or based in Nashville or use Nashville demo studios or recording studios to do their stuff. Nashville is a big union town, and a lot of the guys who play on demo sessions are union players playing at demo scale. Musicians or the songwriter or artist will then take that demo, which sounds amazing because so many great players are on it, and the engineers know what they're doing, and the people producing the sessions are awesome. They will take that demo and then submit it for film and TV listing. Well, technically they can't because the union guys only got paid demo scale.
After my interview with Michael, he asked me to check into union contracts on film and TV, and this is what I found. The union does have film and TV contracts that are separate from demo contracts and master contracts. Typically, film and TV production companies ask for a pre-cleared master. A pre-cleared master is when everyone involved is doing a work for hire, signing a piece of paper that they've been paid in full at the time of the session and do not expect or require any future payments. One reason film production companies want this is so that they own the rights free and clear and can sell the production into syndication, can use clips to promote the film or the TV show. They can do secondary uses without additional accounting and additional payments. On the film and TV contracts, the union require things like if the music is used on a clip that's promoting the show, then up to $1,500 per minute of music needs to be paid to the union afterwards. There are also secondary clauses for uses as a ringtone, etc. Now, if someone has cut their song on a union session, many demo studios in Nashville in particular have been telling writers and artists that all they have to do is upgrade it to a master scale to use in film and TV. This is not true. It would need to be upgraded to a film and TV scale, not a master scale. A master scale is for records to be released. And typically, if anything has been a union session, you cannot go back and make that a work for hire or a pre-cleared master. Once it's a union session, it is not and never will be a pre-cleared master. A union session is a union session. A pre-cleared master is only on a work for hire. So if you record your song at a demo studio, the odds are very good that you have a union session and that you cannot pitch it to TV and film that's requiring a pre-cleared master. Other stipulations of the film to TV contract of the union is that they have different scales for if it's a TV show that spends less than $2 million per episode or more, and greater is a larger scale than smaller. Likewise, with movies, they have full budget feature scale, they have low budget scale. So there's a variety of payment schedules, and the only way that you can do a session appropriately there is if you know ahead of time before recording your music what show it's going into and what the budget is of that show. So there's a lot of restrictions there that would make it difficult to do that on a taxi pitch too. So just be aware that if it's been recorded as a union session, you cannot pitch it to anyone requesting a pre-cleared master. And you need to be aware that there are serious legal ramifications if you do, because if it gets used by the production company, anyone who played or sang on that demo could come back and demand extra payment, or they could actually sue and hold up the TV show or the movie from being released, which you're getting into some serious legal problems that would not be good for your reputation as an artist or a songwriter. So make sure that you get everything cleared the way that you want it before you pitch it.
Right. If I can add something that's an important addendum to that. Many times leave the union thing in Nashville out of it, and let's just say that you and I are friends and I'm a saxophone player, right, and you call me up to come over to your house and lay down a sax part on something that you're going to submit for film or TV. I need to sign a work for hire agreement with you, because if you submit that piece of music to either a music library or directly to a music supervisor, and it makes it on air or whatever, and you haven't gotten the work for hire agreement signed by me, technically you're not allowed to use that.
Right.
I could come back to bite you on the butt. The sax
Very
play.
important. So now there's one other thing I wanted to ask you about too. I know that there are taxi copycats that split submission fees with the listing parties, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there are taxi copycats. We were the first company to do this. There were a few individuals out there that would take money from you to shop your stuff.
Right.
And there was a stigma attached to that, because most of those people were a little less than honorable, let's say. So when I started Taxi, my whole thing was, let's do this really, really well. Let's always be honorable. Let's always take the high road. And then, of course, once we became successful, other people jumped in and tried to copy what we do. And their business model is that they will split the submission fees with the listing party. So it's not making you wonder, are those listings real? Or is somebody just making up a listing in order to get a bunch of submissions in and get half the money? And the submission fees that I've seen, on those other sites range from like $5 up to, I think, $25 a pop. So if somebody gets in 300 submissions for something that's, let's say, $10 a pop,
right,
that's $3,000. 1,500 of that goes to the person who ran the listing. Now, the reason that I know that these companies, not all necessarily, but some of these companies that are pretty big, I know they're running bogus listings, is that we see taxi listings that have just been mildly reworded
Yeah.
and put up on their site. Well, the person who's taking those listings from our email doesn't even know who the listing party is that we're working with. So clearly they can't be sending the music to anybody. They just like the way our listings are written. They change a few words, but we know that there are listings.
Yeah.
Anybody who would look at it would go, yeah, this was plagiarized. And number two, our typos make it into their listings, so they're pretty easy to identify.
By the way, you just reminded me of something. About 6 months ago, I started getting a flood of MP3s and CDs, and I thought that maybe it was an extremely old listing, that I had for an act that I was producing.
Right.
Because sometimes they copy off one tip sheet, put on another, and finally, after about the 12th one, I emailed this guy back and said, what's this for? And one of the companies that I believe is one that you're talking about actually had a listing put in there that was taken off from about a year old Music Row fax when I was producing a country act. They had literally taken the listing off and printed it like it was a brand new listing.
That's what I'm talking about.
With a slightly different description of the music they wanted. And I started getting a flood of stuff.
Yeah. I'm telling you, people are
It is
shameless.
totally bogus listing.
Yeah. And sadly, because most of the people out there doing what we do or copying us, that's where their ethics are. It gives everybody, including Taxi, a bad name. And that goes under the frustration column that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
It pisses me off that those guys do stuff like that, and it makes musicians be wary of companies like Taxi. Where I'm telling you, you couldn't find like an ex-employee anywhere that could ever, even if they hate my guts after they leave here, if I had to fire them or something and they have a reason to have some sort of vendetta, nobody would ever be able to say, I know something sleazy Taxi did 12 years ago, because we just don't. It's not the way we operate.
And that takes a lot of effort to keep everything rolling smoothly and above board all the time. There are always going to be a few people who are going to be dissatisfied no matter what's going down anyway. But still, as long as you know that everything is done right and done honest, and you're the kind of guy that has a good heart anyway. That's pretty obvious. So,
Well, thank you. I've always run the company from day one, that if anybody ever walked in the door and said, show me the file of all the listing requests, we've got it. If they said, show me, prove to me that the music is going to the people in the industry, we've got it. Yeah. Everything is above board, and we're accountable for everything. And I'm very, very proud of that. And yes, it does cost a lot of extra time, a lot of extra money. Yeah. But you know what? Is it really that hard to be honest? That should be the baseline of where we all start, is just be honest.
Excellent. So let me ask you a couple other questions that I like to ask everyone that I interview. One of them is, give us a fun fact about yourself, so something that maybe most of your Taxi members don't know.
I think most of our members know everything about me because I do the weekly webcast, Taxi TV.
And you talk about it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, my life is kind of an open book.
What about the remote control airplanes?
I fly remote control airplanes on weekends. I'm not very good at it. I've been doing it for, 4 or 5 years. I can't give it enough time. It's not easy. You can. It's hard because the perspective changes when you're sitting at the controls of a real airplane. If you want to go left, you turn the wheel left.
Yeah.
When you're flying a remote control airplane, the perspective changes. Sometimes it's coming at you or going left or right. So you always have to imagine yourself sitting at the controls, and it's very difficult. I've crashed a lot of planes. Luckily, they're only a couple $100 a pop, but I love doing it, and I would love to take like a whole week off sometime and go fly planes.
I live a mile from our model airport, our model remote control airport here in Nashville. Actually, I used to go down and watch a lot. One of my best friend bass players spent about 3 years trying to build a round UFO that would fly. And of course, he was into X-Files and things. So, and of course, I watched probably 4 or 5 of them crash. They were
everybody who flies crashes, but it's a great hobby, especially for guys like us that are into recording gear and we like techie stuff. You know, for anywhere from like go buy a little miniature quadcopter that will fit in the palm of your hand for like $30. That is a ton of fun.
I've got 2 of those.
Oh, cool. I've got about 4 or 5. And I love them. They're fun to drive the cat crazy with. And it's just good, clean fun, but you have to be prepared to crash the stuff, break it, and repair it. I spend more time repairing than I do flying.
That's true. So let's say you're having a dinner party at your house. Name 3 songs that you would play at your dinner party.
Ooh. Are we talking like, I mean, not sitting at the table for background music. You're talking about just music in general. Anything by Steely Dan. Probably the song Asia by Steely Dan, in my opinion, is probably the best written, played, engineered, and produced piece of music that maybe has ever existed. It's like a flawless work of art, and I love it. It actually brings tears to my eyes, not because of the subject matter of the song, but because of the incredible quality of just everybody's work in that project. And having spent many years sitting behind a console, it's just like, wow, that's where the bar is set. So that's one. I also grew up in the Eagles era, and they were doing the record One of These Nights at Criteria the day I started there. And so, anything by the Eagles would have to go on there. And of course, the Beatles. And how do you pick a favorite Beatles song? But I would say Beatles, Eagles, and Steely Dan are clearly my favorites, and almost anything by any of those artists. And there's so many others too that I could mention, but those would be 3.
Excellent. And is there any one song that, let's say, you know, often in a movie there'll be a theme song that runs the theme, you know, the emotional gamut for the whole movie. Do you have a theme song that says what, you know, what would be the theme of your life?
Whew, the theme of my life, man.
That's a tough question, I know. I may have to edit this out.
You know what? Take It Easy by the Eagles, and here's why. And I'm sure it's been used in movies, but it is a song that pops into my head a lot, and it's because back in the day when I was a teenager, you could hitchhike without being murdered in America. And I do remember being hitchhiking in the middle of a snowstorm in Illinois, which was where I grew up, like a blizzard-level snowstorm. And somebody picked me up. I think it was a van full of pot-smoking hippies. Must have been, 1970, 71, somewhere around. And I got in the van, and Take It Easy was playing. And I've been running down the road trying to loosen my load. Yep. So that song pops into my head a lot. I'm sure it's been used in a movie or TV show. So there you go.
It does me also, and I love the line, "Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy."
Right.
That's real. Well, actually, maybe that's a good note for us to wrap up on. So you can find Taxi on the web, taxi.com, and I will put links on the video that people can click and go to Taxi, check them out. And anything? What about Facebook? Are you on Facebook, Twitter?
Yeah, we are. Facebook. We're Taxi Independent A&R. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. We do the weekly show on called Taxi TV every Monday at 4 p.m. LA time.
Right.
And that is on Ustream with letter U, STREAM, Ustream.com. But we also put the archives of the shows up on YouTube as well. And can I add one more thing just for the folks
Sure.
Nashville? Because people from Nashville always say, "Oh yeah, Taxi," you know. Look, there's nothing better than moving to Nashville and paying your dues, and you and I both know that it's 5 to 10 years of keeping your head down, keeping being humble, not trying to step off the bus as it were, and act like you're the next the greatest thing since sliced bread. That doesn't work in Nashville.
No.
You got to pay your dues and get to know people, build your network in your community.
Yeah.
So people from Nashville always say, "Oh yeah, Taxi." I wouldn't use them. You need to move here. They're right. That's the number one thing you can do to get ahead in Nashville and get a cut. But most people can't just pack up and leave and move to Nashville, as you mentioned earlier. Right. So people often say, well, what has Taxi ever done in Nashville? Well, Buy Me a Rose, which was Kenny Rogers' first hit in like 20 years or something, it was written by two guys named Eric Hickenlooper and Jim Funk. And they did it in the back bedroom of an old farmhouse in Utah. And it got played on a panel at the Taxi Road Rally and got picked up by a publisher because of that, and eventually found its way to Kenny Rogers and became a #1 hit. And then there was a guy named Elliot Park, whose music I heard under the roof here at Taxi. And I was on my way to Nashville for a series of meetings, brought it with me, played it for the VP of A&R at RCA. He said, "Who is this guy?" I said, "He's Elliot Park from Baird, Texas. Population, like 3,243 people." And he said, "Well, that guy's the real deal." Yeah. I called Elliot, had him meet me in Nashville 10 days later, got him 22 meetings with publishers. He signed with the Extreme Writers Group, great guys, had several other offers. And for like the next 3 or 4 years, the guy had holds everywhere with every major artist you can imagine, didn't get a cut. And then finally his song that he co-wrote with Walt Aldridge, who happens to be a friend of mine and a great guy, called I Loved Her First, which is the twist is you'd think it's about a girlfriend, but it's actually about a guy talking about his daughter to his future son-in-law who's walking down the aisle with her. Yeah. And that song became a #1 hit, and still to this day and probably forever will get played at weddings. And look, Taxi is not as good as going to Nashville and pounding pavement. But if you want to find out if you've got what it takes that you should start thinking about moving there and pounding pavement, Taxi is a really good way to get your foot in the door in Nashville.
And don't forget, Taxi isn't just for LA or just for Nashville or just for New York. It's for all of them, all of the above.
Yeah, I mean, we get listings from companies in Australia and Europe, and our members, like I said, I think 90 different countries around the world. And just because you live in Singapore doesn't mean you're at any disadvantage. You're on a level playing field with everybody, because in the end it comes down to, is this piece of music right for what the industry professional needs? It's that simple.
Yeah. Excellent. Sounds good. Look forward to getting together again one of these days. Give me a shout when you make it in Nashville next time.
I will. I'm long overdue.
Yep. Sounds good. Okay, so we're signing off for now, and I'll put all the links up, and check out Taxi. Trust me, it works. I'm a long-time pro who got my first 100 cuts on my own, and I use Taxi. Wow. And I've got cuts there.
Well, thank you.
I think that says a lot, Those
kind words, and thank you for having me on the show. It was fun.
Thanks. Bye.